This is Christopher John Bjerknes. It is May 26th, 2023. I'd like to start off by thanking those of you who have contributed. You saved me. I'm incredibly grateful to you. You're enabling me to make this video. I plan to make videos probably almost daily from now on, as long as I can receive the funding. Anyone who would like to donate, there will be links in the description below and on my website, cjbbooks.com, beneath each book title. Again, I am tremendously grateful to those of you who have contributed. You really saved me. So, on May 28th, this Sunday, there will be the second round elections in Turkey to choose between the challenger, Kılıçdaroğlu, and the incumbent, Erdogan. Leading up to the first round, Kılıçdaroğlu was leading in the polls, and it was predicted that he would likely win and exceed the bar of 50% so that there wouldn't have to be a second round election. Instead, he came in second place, and Erdogan came in first place, but just below the bar at 49%. So there will be this second round runoff. And incredibly, this all follows a Kabbalistic script, which was originally written in the Old Testament, telling the story of the Messianic twins, Peretz and his twin brother, Zerah. And Kılıçdaroğlu's campaign, amazingly, has been a Dönme subterfuge that is casting spells and curses on the Turks and on the world, as is typical of the Dönme. Kılıçdaroğlu often flashes this sign, which misleads people into believing that he is making a heart symbol of love, when in fact he is designating the twin serpents, the holy serpent, the serpent of light, which represents Mashiach ben David. Mashiach ben David is the chief of the Muslims. This is revealed in the book Kol HaTur, Song of the Turtle Dove, which was written about the Gaon of Vilna and his beliefs. He is also flashing the evil serpent, which is Mashiach ben Joseph. Mashiach ben Joseph is represented by Edom and the West, and signifies Jesus Christ and the Christians. He is the Messiah who misleads the Christians into doom. He is the substitute fool king who loses and dies so that victorious Mashiach ben David, Erdogan, can win and become king. This is all a script that was written out in the story of the birth of the twins, Peretz and Zerah, which reverses the birth of Esau and Jacob. In the birth of Esau and Jacob, Esau comes out first, and Jacob later has to steal his birthrights and blessings. In the story of the birth of the twins from Tamar, the twins Peretz and Zerah, it is Zerah who sticks his arm out first, and the midwives wrap red yarn around his wrist to mark him as being first to open the womb. The scapegoat was also marked with a red cloth, and the gate of the sanctuary was marked with a red cloth, and that was part of the scapegoat ritual. When the scapegoat was pushed off the cliff and torn apart and killed and offered to Satan, the red yarn would turn white, and that would indicate that the scapegoat ritual had been successful, and the sins of Israel had been transferred to the Gentiles through the offering of the scapegoat, which confuses Samael and leads to mercy being obtained from the Lord for Israel and punishment, severity, and justice being unjustly imposed on the Gentiles for the sins of Israel. Kilij wears that same red yarn thread that is twisted also with white yarn to indicate the transition that the scapegoat ritual has been successful, and the red yarn of sin has turned white and pure as snow to show that the Israelites have been cleansed of their sins by scapegoating the Gentiles for their sins and placing them on the neck and the head of the Gentiles, whereby the Gentiles are the scapegoat for the Israelites. You can see that when this wristband of yarn is put on his wrist and tied, it represents those two serpents, the evil serpent and the holy serpent, which is also represented by the white yarn braided together with the red yarn, and the two fingers for the symbol of victory that Kilij flashes, which also resemble Baphomet, who also bears the twin serpents of the caduceus and shows two fingers to represent those two serpents and the twin messiahs. It also represents the tree of the knowledge of good and evil and the tree of life. This story of the birth from Judah and Tamar of the twins, Peretz and Zerah, is incredibly important in Judaism. The Messiah, son of David, is also called the Messiah, son of Peretz. Peretz was a more righteous person than David, and his birth leaving the womb in its entirety first ahead of Zerah represents the triumph of Jewry over the Gentiles, and Peretz, again, is a more righteous figure than David. But they both represent the same figure, but the process of birth is reversed. And Erdogan is playing the role of Peretz, and Kilij is playing the role of Zerah, Messiah, son of Joseph, of Jesus Christ. Kilij pledged to make Turkey aligned with the West, and he was going to circumvent Azerbaijan and run trade routes to eastern Pan-Turkey via Iran. So he is Jesus, the champion of the West. He represents Edom. He represents King Shiroi of Iran and the Persians. And he represents the war of Messiah, son of Joseph, in which the Messiah, son of Joseph, is killed as the substitute full king so that Messiah, son of David, can triumph and win the election. So he is playing that role to ensure that Erdogan is elected. And all of this is part of a satanic Kabbalistic ritual that the Dern May are performing in collusion with Chabad Lubavitch to have the Eurasianist East of Marxists and Muslims represented by their Messiah, son of David, on the other side, on the Gentile side of Erdogan, triumphing based upon the death, which is symbolized by the loss in this election, of Kilij Darulu. Genesis explains the birth story, which is being repeated in the election. And remember, it's incredible, and it's difficult to believe, but it's factually correct and logical, that Kilij Darulu was leading in the first round, which is what happens when Zerah is being born. He leads in the first round, and he thrusts out his arm, and the midwives wrap him with the red yarn, which Kilij Darulu has done. And the polls said that he was going to win in the first round, so he thrust his arm through the womb and branded himself with the red yarn of the scapegoat. When the time came for her, Tamar, to give birth, there were twin boys in her womb. As she was giving birth, one of them put out his hand. So the midwife took a scarlet thread, a red thread, and tied it on his wrist and said, "This one came out first." But when he drew back his hand, his brother came out. And she said, "So this is how you have broken out." And he was named Peretz. Peretz means breaking out. The Kabbalists make a very big deal out of that idea of breaking through the wall, breaking out, being the first to open the womb, and how Peretz reversed what Jacob had done and became the first to come out of the womb. Then his brother, who had the scarlet thread, the red thread, on his wrist came out, and he was named Zerah. Zerah can mean scarlet, red, or brightness. Red is also Edom. It is Jesus Christ. It is Seth among the Egyptians. It is the red lands of Egypt, the red hair of Seth, the red hair of Esau, and the red hair of Seth. So he, Kilishtarlu, represents Esau, represents Seth, represents the evil serpent, and he loses in this birth contest between him and his brother Peretz, who is Erdogan. And the election cycle is matching exactly this birth cycle, where he was leading in the first round and then withdrew his arm after being branded on the wrist with the red bracelet. And this whole scapegoat ritual relates to Isaiah chapter 1, verse 18. "Come now and let us reason together, saith the Lord. Through your sins be as scarlet, red. They shall be as white as snow," white, the wool. "Though they be red like crimson, they shall be as wool, white." And in the scapegoat story, that is the transition of the red cloth or yarn that was tied around the horns of the goat and tied around the gate of the sanctuary to indicate that the scapegoat ritual had succeeded when the red turned white. And this scapegoat ritual, in which Kilishtarlu, the West, is being defeated by the East, by Messiah, son of David, replicates that transfer of power through scapegoating the Gentiles for the sins of the Israelites, for the sins, in this case, of Muslims and Marxists against the West. It is instead the West who is always scapegoated for what it is that the Eurasianists are doing. And this represents the Leviathan. Kilishtarlu represents the Leviathan of the Atlanticists and the West, and that's exactly how he is portrayed in the Duganist alternative media and by Erdogan himself. And Erdogan represents the horn of the behemoth of the Eurasianists on the east, who portray themselves as the Holy Serpent and Messiah, son of David, who are taking heavenly Jerusalem for Israel. And this is all part of a Kabbalistic ritual. So when Kilishtarlu flashes two fingers or shows the sign of the two serpents as if it's a heart of love, he is representing the twin serpents of the twin messiahs, of the bird that needs two wings to be balanced. Good and evil have to be balanced in order for victory to be achieved. And he represents Messiah ben Yosef, Messiah, son of Joseph. He represents Jesus Christ. He represents Edom and the West and Christendom. And Erdogan represents the Holy Serpent, the behemoth, Messiah ben David, Messiah, son of Joseph, who is aligned with Russia, who is aligned with China, who is aligned with the East to defeat the West. Kilishtarlu is the substitute full king, like Jesus Christ, who dies so that the real king, Erdogan, Mashiach ben David, Jesus Barabbas, as opposed to Jesus Christ, can live and triumph and succeed. And all of this, again, is a retelling of Peretz and Zerah in Tamar's womb, which reverses the story of Esau and Jacob in Rebekah's womb. Some other things I'd like to point out from my notes. In Kabbalah, there's a very important legend about the Zer on Pin, the lower 7 Sephirot, and it states that the Shekinah and the Yahweh are back to back, and that they have to turn around and face each other for the two serpents, the holy serpent and the evil serpent, to be united. And that is also part of what Kilij Darlu is symbolizing, with these two serpents representing two people as if they are a heart of love. This is all a part of politics in general. You have the left and the right. You have the revolutionaries and the counter-revolutionaries. And I'm going to show you now a clip of Kilij Darlu flashing these symbols and teaching the crowd to flash these symbols. And you'll also notice that Kilij Darlu presents himself frequently with Mustafa Kemal Ataturk in the background. Mustafa Kemal Ataturk said that he was descended from Shabbatai Tzevi, who was Mashiach, son of David, who proclaimed himself to be Messiah in 1666, and who founded the cult of the Durnmei, who are crypto-Jews who rule Turkey and have ruled Turkey for centuries behind the throne. So let's play this clip. You can see him making that symbol and showing off, posing for the cameras with that symbol, and teaching the crowd and his fellow politicians to make that symbol of the twin serpents. And here you can see in the background, that is Kemal Ataturk, Mustafa Kemal Ataturk, who was descended from Shabbatai Tzevi and represents Messiah, son of David. So we have Messiah, son of David, and we have Messiah, son of Joseph. We have Peretz, and we have Zerah appearing on the same stage. Zerah, though pretending he represents the victory of Mustafa Kemal Ataturk. In fact, he does, because he is going to deliberately lose in order for Messiah, son of David, Erdogan, to succeed. Here again, we see Mustafa Kemal Ataturk. And he was supposedly representing secularism, but that has Erdogan now fulfills the ultimate role of the Sitra Achra's Messiah, son of David, as the champion of Islam against Messiah, son of Joseph, who is the champion of Christianity. And this will show the victory of Islam and Marxism and the Eurasianists against the Leviathan of Christianity in the West. So he is flashing the two serpents, and everyone is deceived into believing that he's showing a heart of love. There, when he raised his thumbs, he is showing the two messiahs and how the two messiahs represent the twin serpents. It's all a complete deception. So he's giving the thumbs up, but what he's really showing is the two messiahs being turned into the two serpents, and those two serpents uniting to form the caduceus. So here we have Mustafa Kemal Ataturk, who is Messiah, son of David. We have Kilij Darlu, who is Zerah, who is Messiah, son of Joseph, and he is wearing, as he always does, that braided yarn of red and white, which represents the scapegoat transferring the sins of Israel to the Gentiles and represents the fact that Peretz, Messiah, son of David, is going to win the election by coming out of the womb first, unlike Jacob, who lost that race. So you can see his Kabbalah bracelet, his bracelet of Zerah on his wrist, marking him as the loser and the scapegoat. I'd like to once again thank the good people who contributed. You saved me. Thank you very much. I'm eternally grateful to you. And I hope everyone is grateful to you, because your contributions have made this possible and have encouraged me to keep going and making more videos. I'm going to be explaining why the Ottoman flag has a red field for the background, why it shows the crescent moon of Islam together with the pentagram, and it relates to all of this. And it all ties together and it all makes sense. It's all logical. As difficult as it is to believe that these people are crazy enough to carry this stuff out, it's factually correct, and it is logical to represent that that's what they're doing. So I will see you next time, probably with that video on the crescent moon and the pentagram and what they mean in Islam, how they are described in the Zohar, and what they meant to the Egyptians, who are the basis of all of this cryptic mythology. See you next time.